Welcome to Witch Hat Chats. Come on in and sit for our spell. We're sponsored by Evermoving We Rise Institute, LLC, Evermoving We Rise Temple, and Saul Ravencraft, the Texas Mojo Man. I am your goddess host, Miss Flame, and our co-host, Saul Ravencraft, has disappeared. But you know what? We got somebody else. Yes, you know, he was so adamant that I had another co-host for this. So that way I wouldn't be by myself. So guess who we got?
We have me. I'm Jason Mankey, a Llewellyn author, 10 books of witchcraft. I'm also a whiskey enthusiast, a huge fan of Yule. That's my favorite Sabbath. And I watch too many sports. Yeah, I think that's all the important stuff. I think that's the important stuff.
Awesome. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. What about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. And you know what? My best friend, she is going to love you if she ever met you because you are a Steelers fan.
I am. I'm a hardcore Steeler fan. If I had my life to do over, I would have never watched sports, but it's too late. So I'm a fan of all that. And I'll tell you, in the witch and pagan community, it kind of makes you an oddball sometimes because there aren't a whole lot of sports fans. And people are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm watching football on my phone right now, you know?" And they're like, "That's so weird." And I'm like, "Well, I think watching Doctor Who is weird." So it all,
Me, the only time I watch sports is if I'm betting on it.
yeah. And
And
I
then
don't bet.
and then you don't bet?
I don't bet. I don't bet. Every time I bet, I lose. So I try to avoid bets as much as possible. So I just watch it because I enjoy it. And I'll tell you one of the things as a witch that I enjoy about it though is when you watch a live sporting event, you can feel that energy in that space.
Hmm.
And let's say you're even just at a bar watching with a lot of people, you could still feel that energy because everybody's invested in it, especially if it's a big game
Hmm.
like a Super Bowl or whatever. And I love feeling all of that energy. So I think that's one of the reasons I like sports.
Oh yeah, and with the whiskey and everything, you get all that energy and you can be able to do something with that.
Yes, yes, it kind of makes the energy sloppy sometimes, but it's still there.
I can understand that.
Yeah,
All right, so you want to know what today's divination is?
I do.
All right, so today's divination, and yes, I do have positive energy tea in my tea thingy. All right, so this is by an unknown author, and he says that the eyes are useless when the mind is blind. Ooh, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. So, what do you think about that, Jason?
I think it's a pretty apropos saying because there are a lot of people who see things, but they don't really see them at all. They only see what they want to see, or they ignore something that's really obvious, like a fault in a person or whatever, because they're blinded by this idea that is not true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel very deep right now, like I'm very philosophical.
I mean, that's really true. I think that is occurring right now in our country a lot. You know, you especially when it comes to somebody who you admire or somebody who you truly love, you or you may see it, but you just don't want to kind of see it. You always give them an excuse or something like that, or either you see it, but you don't want to really kind of admit. It's like you ask for the opportunity. It's like in magic. Okay, take something in magic. Um, you want something. You're working on it. You manifest it, and you ask for it, but because it's not that particular type of thing, and the universe thinks that this something is a little bit more better for you versus what you ask, you push that away because it's not exactly what you want, you know, like a job or something. Maybe a better job is coming along, but it's not the job that you want. It's this other job, you know. Um, to me, I always say try to go down all of the avenues you possibly can, even if you think the avenue is not going to go anywhere, because I'm one that's trying to be open for everything I possibly can, especially if the ancestors are screaming to you and telling you, you really need to look at this because this is no good. You got to look at this.
You don't know where a road will take you if you never get on the road at all. You gotta
Right.
start the journey somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, especially if it's like several times it tells you this, have you ever had that happen to you before, Jason? You keep ignoring something and it keeps telling you the same thing over and over again. And you're like, okay, let's just go and do it.
Oh, like I think that's most of my life. Like any good decision I've made has come after ignoring that decision I should have made for a long time. Like I celebrated my 20th wedding anniversary last year, and I probably should have
Congratulations.
been celebrating my 25th wedding anniversary, but I'm dumb and didn't see what I had right in front of my face for a long time, right? And I fought that. I wanted to be, swinging single dude, right? And
Hmm.
stupid. My life is so much better being married, but I ignored that for a very, very long time because, stupid. Yeah, right? And I feel like even embracing paganism and witchcraft, it was like that. I think there was this knock at the door, and I refused to answer for a while, because it is a big step. And sometimes, especially at the time that I was embracing this stuff in the early 90s, the word witch was still a very scary word to a lot of people, right? So it was like, I don't want to do this. That's like, is this going to interfere with watching football or whatever? Like, I don't want to do this, But there was that knock. Hello, hello, hello. So yes, I'm very good at that. I'm very good at ignoring the doors that I'm supposed to answer and the roads that I'm supposed to walk on.
Right, right. And especially if you get discouraged by other people and they tell you, oh, you don't want to do that. I have a lot of people that tell me that all the time. Oh no, Nikki, you don't want to go and do your own business. You'll never make it. You know, all that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of negativity out there. A lot of people,
Hmm.
who they're scared to walk that path, and they're scared for you to walk your own path. I think
Right,
life
right.
is life involves a little bit of risk, and not just
Hmm.
when we're flying in planes all the time.
That's true. It's every decision you make involves a risk, one
Yeah,
way or the other.
yeah,
And that's what it means to be at the crossroads. Because when you're at the crossroads, and you make dozens of decisions every single day. I mean, from the moment you open up your eyes to the moment you go to bed and close your eyes, you make decisions all the time. You make decisions when you open up your eyes to whether you're going to get out of bed or not. There's a decision. You make a decision. Do you go to the bathroom or not? There's a decision. You make a decision whether you're going to brush your teeth or not. I mean, every single thing is a decision.
and I
So,
think
I mean,
yeah, and I think too is we make a decision to see what we want to see or not want to see. Going back to sort of the daily divination, it's really easy to
mhm,
overlook flaws in people if you like somebody. It's hard to have that reckoning, and to be entirely truthful about somebody. I mean, I think we've all encountered people that we've liked, who we know have done things that are not good. And sometimes
Hmm.
it's easy, you know, to ignore that not good, but we shouldn't, right? We should have to look at a whole person, both the good and the bad.
Right, right. And people who are prejudiced and see people's um, faults first, they, they tend to see that before they actually, that really,
Mm.
really bugs me. God, it just ticks me off. Um, I get to know the person first. You can't, it's just like they tell you, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, a lot of times you can't judge a person by what they look like,
Oh, absolutely not.
right? And in today's world, it's just like I like people of different cultures and everything. I like to learn about different cultures and stuff. It's fun. It's interesting to be able to learn something different, especially if it's really different from you. And go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, and I think in a lot of ways, we used to not be able to do that. Meeting somebody from a
Hmm.
foreign culture was pretty rare, kind of exotic. And now the world is a much smaller place, and there are more and more opportunities to meet people who do things differently than you. The world is much more of a melting pot. We're not as isolated. And certainly there are communities that are still isolated. You know, I live in a small town here, you know, whatever. But because of online things, the world shrinks a lot. You can still make friends with people who are from different places, who do things differently. And I think there's a lot to learn with all that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So basically, everybody needs to open up their damn mind. There we go. There's the lesson today.
They really take the time to see things.
So, next week we will both be at the Spring Mysteries Festival, and that'll be in Seattle. So, have you ever been there, Jason?
I was there 2 years ago, so I've been through it once before. Is this your first time?
Yes. So you can tell me all about it.
Or I can tell you nothing because it's an initiation cult, so I have to be really quiet. I'm not supposed to say anything about it. But it's unlike any other event I've ever done, and I do a lot of witchcraft events over the course of a year, whether it's festivals or pagan pride days or whatever it is. And the spring mysteries are really unique in that,
Hmm.
you know, it's a mystery, right? It's a recreation of ancient Eleusis and the mysteries of Demeter and Persephone. So, you know, it's very focused on the Greek gods, and I'm a huge fan of the Greek gods, so that's wonderful for me. And you have people who whose bodies are being inhabited by the gods the entire weekend, which is a pretty powerful experience. I think one of the things that I really like about witchcraft and paganism is the spirituality that you can be really close to, right? There's not something between us and higher powers. It's just right there.
Hmm.
And I think at the Spring Mysteries, you get to engage in that. And I'm old and it's in a hotel, so the bed is comfortable. And I really appreciate that at this point. The only thing I don't like is that I think it starts too early in the morning, like at 9 a.m.
Right.
Just for me, as a whiskey enthusiast, that's too early in the morning.
So, what classes will you be teaching?
I think I'm doing some rituals, is what I'm doing. I'm doing a Dionysian ritual and a ritual for Pan. And I think I do one of the rituals on Wednesday, and then I close out and do another ritual on Saturday. So I think that's really what I have to do. So that'll be fun. Not sure exactly what I'm going to be doing yet. Sometimes I just let the spirit overtake me in the moment, and that's how it all sort of unfolds. Though
Oh,
most often, especially if you're doing rituals for Pan and Dionysus, there's going to be some wine. That's
oh
how,
yeah.
yeah. Dionysus is a god of wine. Pan's favorite companion was the wine skin. So you kind of have to have some wine in there, or at least grape juice. Yeah.
Well,
And
wine's always better.
yeah, there are people who, stay away from alcohol, and I think that's
Right.
great. I always want to respect that. And so, yeah.
Right.
So they're all made from grapes. As long as it's some sort of grape beverage, we're in good shape. Whether it's wine or a grape Capri Sun or whatever it is, as long as there's some grapes in there. But I think it'll be fun. My rituals are really contemporary when I do Pan and Dionysus rituals. They're not attempts to recreate ancient Greece.
Right.
They're very much in a modern sort of Wiccan witchcraft context. So, and high energy. I mean, it's to me, a ritual is not a sitting activity. It involves everybody. And we rise and fall together when we do ritual together. So if everybody's not into it, it's gonna suck. I need everybody into it and everybody ready to yell and cuss and whatever else I have planned. So it'll be fun. It'll be very exciting.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Yeah, and the hotel's nice too. It's in a nice little part of Seattle. There's a couple of things around it if you need to get food and stuff, which is useful. Yeah, and everybody's really nice. I mean, most of the people there are ATC, but not necessarily exclusively so, and a lot of people know each other. Feels very much like a family event in a lot of ways.
Awesome. I've been really looking forward to it. I even got a new dress and everything. So I'm really, really looking forward to it.
I'm gonna wear clean underwear, so I'm really excited about that part of it. I do like it when the jokes land with you. That's important to me. So that's good. That's good.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Is it
Do
going
you
to
have
be
any?
brand new underwear?
No, but they'll be washed. They'll be washed and dried
They'll
properly.
be washed.
Do you have any questions about the Spring Mysteries?
Well, as far as any of it going to be outside or is it all going to be inside?
It's all been moved inside.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you do have to walk outside to get to the building where everything is. It's like there's a hotel and then there's an activities building, but all of the events are inside, which I think is nice, especially as our community ages. There are a
Hmm.
lot of people with mobility issues and whatever else who just can't really do outside things unless
Right.
that outside has been really well taken care of. And
Right.
in our community, there's really not always a whole lot of money for that sort of infrastructure. So
Right.
doing events in a hotel does make things easier.
It does, and I rather it be in for me. Um, I'd rather be inside a hotel anyway. Because the goddess created inside plumbing for a reason.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I've never been a camper. They took me camping when I was in Girl Scouts one time, and there was three troops that shared a cabin, a little bitty cabin, and the troop leaders decided that they were sick and tired of all of us little girls being in a cabin, and it was 37 degrees outside, and they told all of us little girls to get out and learn about nature. Well, I found out that Mother Nature was a absolute bitch when she is 37 degrees in the mountains when I was a child. And I froze my ass off, is what I did. We didn't start fires. We wasn't allowed to start fires. We were just told to go and roam. That was that was my Girl Scout trip, camping. And ever since then, I've decided that I will never ever go camping again. I do not want to go camping. Hell Fuck no. And ever since then, no. My idea of camping is the Hilton Hotel. That is my idea of camping. No way in hell am I going to go and lay down on the ground. I am not going to have ants all over me. Hell no. So let's take a break for our wonderful, wonderful commercials, and we will be right back with Witch Chat Chats. Stay tuned. We are all magical beings. As a solitary practitioner, you forge your own path, growing, evolving, and discovering your power. But the solitary road can be difficult, filled with challenges, setbacks, and self-doubt. What do you do when things bump back? At Evermoving We Rise Temple, our name is our way of life. We understand that spirituality is deeply personal, yet the journey is easier with guidance, support, and community. Here, you'll not only learn to wield the magical tools at your fingertips, but also develop the personal responsibility and confidence to own your magic. In our safe and welcoming space, you'll gain the reinforcement you need to master your craft, surrounded by a magical family that stands strong together. Step beyond the solitary struggle and step into a thriving community dedicated to your magical evolution. Start today. Visit our website, Linktree, or Facebook page. Discover why we don't fit in the box. And coming soon, the Evermoving We Rise Institute, your next step in mastering your spiritual path and deepening your magical practice. The journey doesn't stop here. Are you ready to rise?
I'm Saul Ravencraft, co-host of Witch Hat Chats. I understand just how confusing and chaotic it can be to open to a path of magic and manifestation. Everything seems to turn on its head. I want to be an ally as you find the way upon your path. My studio setup will let us do readings, coaching, and exploration virtually, just as though you were sitting across the table from me. One size does not fit all, and we will work together to craft the right approaches to build your practice, your confidence, and your power using the tools of divination, magical works, and spirit connections. It's never too late to embrace a new path and emerge empowered. Go to TexasMojoMan.com and select Contact to begin. There's a message now. Let's get started working on your very good fortune.
And we are back with Witch Chat Chats. It's Miss Flame and Jason. All right.
It's great to be here.
All right. So you had just come out with a new book. And so let's talk about your new book. So what's the title of your new book?
My new book is High Priest Raymond Buckland, the Father of American Witchcraft. So I am now officially a biographer, not just a book writer, a biographer, which to me just sounds even more impressive. How many people can say they've written a biography of somebody? A lot of people can say they've written a book, but a biography, it's why I have these swanky glasses, because I want to look smarter, because I'm now a biographer. You know, it's very important. Yeah. So that's it. Most people know Raymond Buckland, especially in the witchcraft world, because of the Big Blue Book. And that was published in 1986. It's a blue book. It's oversized, and there's a giant pentagram on the cover. It might be the most recognizable book in the history of modern witchcraft. And Ray wrote about 60 books over the course of his life. And it was during the pandemic Llewellyn, my editor at Llewellyn's like, Jason, I need to talk to you. We need to do a Zoom meeting. We need to talk. And I was like, oh God, what? And I just had this feeling they were going to ask me to do something crazy, like write a biography of somebody. And I was prepared to say no, but they talked me into it because it's a lot of work writing about somebody else's life. And it's not your story as a writer, it's their story, right? And you want to make sure that you tell it truthfully and in an engaging way. So I got roped into this by Llewellyn, but it was really fun because it was a thing I'd never done before and probably will never do again. But, you know, it's always nice to have a challenge. And writing this book was definitely a challenge. But Ray, it does sound a little pretentious, the father of American witchcraft, but in a lot of ways, I think it's true. He was really one of the first people in the United States, even though he was English by birth. He was one of the first people in the United States to say, hello, I'm a witch, and to spread witchcraft throughout North America. If you're a witch history nerd, there's a lot to find in this book that I think people will enjoy. If you're not a witch history nerd, you should still buy it anyways, because I'm nice and I have great hair. So, you know, it's still useful.
Well, you are nice and you do have great hair.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. But it's sometimes too, when you're writing a book, you want to put somebody in context from where they were. So there's a lot of things about what witchcraft was like in the United States in the early 1960s, which was nearly non-existent. There just weren't a whole lot of people calling themselves witches. How the witchcraft world, especially in publishing, changed during the 1970s. You know, in the 60s, there were books about witchcraft, but they didn't really tell you how to do witchcraft. I think we take it for granted now how great books are, how many great resources there are. And if you wanted to be a witch in 1968, you had really two choices. You could be initiated into a coven, which was what most people thought witchcraft really was, or you could just make it all up on your own. Those were your two options. And it was hard to find people to initiate you because it was a very small community. And making it all up on your own is a lot of work. You know, writing rituals, figuring out how you kind of want to do things. And in the early 70s, finally, you had books that sort of gave you a rudimentary like ritual script, so you kind of figure out how to do it. And then by the end of the 70s, there were real how-to books. You know, this is what witches believe, and this is how to do witchcraft. It took a long time to get there. It took a really long time to get there.
Right. So when you were writing the biography, how were you kind of phrasing it? I mean, were you kind of doing it from his point of view, or were you doing it like most people do? You know, he was born on this date, blah 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 blah. Because I've never read one of your books, so I'm just kind of curious.
It's a hard, you know, the point of view can be difficult. So I think in the witchcraft world, when we read a witch book, the author usually writes with a lot of I's. I do this, I do that. It's a very personal way of writing. For me, I've always tried to write like I speak. So it's like we're having a conversation. But when you're telling somebody's life story, that's a little harder to do. But there are times, you know, when I'll be like, you know, and I think that Ray meant this and stuff. So I still got it to be a little bit conversational. I had a really big asset while I was writing this book, and that Ray had written a memoir of his life. It wasn't complete, and it really wasn't very good. I don't want to be mean to him, but you know, it was more like a first attempt. It was like, this is what I did this day, and this is what I did the next day, and oh, by the way, this is the car I had in 1971, and it handled really, really well on wet roads, but not as well on icy roads. But it had a great pickup. Raymond Buckland really loved cars, so his memoir is a lot of car stuff. But that was really useful because I kind of got the broad outlines of his life, and I got some of his personal stories. I had only ever met Raymond Buckland once, and that was really in passing at a witch event in the late 90s when I was a, you know, baby witchling. So it's not like he and I were friends. And I sat down to write this book about my friend who passed on. I didn't really know Ray. So having the memoir was like having him in my head a little bit, and he was a good writer. And so some of the stories that he tells in the memoir are funny and they're well told. So there are times when I quote the memoir, but I also didn't want to just quote his memoir. And one of the things that his memoir doesn't do is it doesn't put him in context of the time, right? Like, what was witchcraft like in 1966? Why did he do the things that he did and the way that he did them? And so I wanted to explain that. And while he doesn't necessarily explain it in his writings that he left us.
Right. Right. I would kind of find that difficult myself, trying to write about somebody who, number one, you barely knew. And this was a major figure in the witchcraft world. And I'm glad you were able to. How were you able to overcome all of this? How can I say this? All of this heavy pressure of being able to write this story.
Heavy pressure is a good term, because I probably just stared at my computer screen for 4 months before I really started writing, because it was scary, because it was something that I'd never done before. And you really want to get something right. I think not knowing him, though, was beneficial in some ways, because I didn't have preconceived notions of who he was, right?
Mhm.
And I could just sort of look at it fresh. And there were times when I could see, like, oh, he did that, right? Like, so here's an example. There's the threefold law of return. Like, if especially in a lot of witchcraft books in the 80s and 90s, it was always like, if you do good 3 times, it will come back to you 3 times. And if you do bad, it will come back to you 3 times, right? I think we all know that.
Mhm.
He made that up. Like, it doesn't exist before he says it in a magazine article. And he says it because he gets another idea confused. So Gerald Gardner was the world's first modern public witch, went public in 1951 in England. The Gardnerian tradition, Wiccan witchcraft, that was started by Gerald. And one of his fiction books about witchcraft, he just basically says, if somebody does good to you, you should return that good 3-fold. So if somebody's nice to you, maybe be nice to 3 other people. And Ray Buckland takes it and turns it into something bigger than what Gerald Gardner had said. And it's kind of fun to watch the evolution of ideas. And, you can see it in real time. Like, oh, it was in this magazine article. And then it's in his books. And as one of the first people to write about witchcraft, it gets passed on, it gets passed on, it gets passed on. And suddenly it's this, ancient rule that didn't exist before 1967. Yeah.
I always said it was bullshit.
I've always thought it was a nice idea. And I do think that what you put out comes back to you, like attracts like. But, that's a pretty big wallop, right? 3 times what you do, right? Like that's asking a lot. Maybe it happened to Ray. Ray had a pretty good life, so maybe it did happen to him. And Ray, passed in 2017. So there's still people who knew Ray who are here, because it wasn't that long ago. And Ray in the late 60s started a witchcraft museum and had a lot of artifacts of various witches and things that were his that he put in his witchcraft museum. And he kept a lot of his correspondence, which was really useful if you're a history nerd. And today, the Raymond Buckland Museum still exists. It's in Cleveland, Ohio, the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. And the people who run it are terrific, and they treat it like a real museum. It's not just a joke. It's a real museum, and they have a lot of written material that Ray had throughout his life. So when I was researching the book, I got to look at letters and things, like letters from Gerald Gardner, letters from early seekers of witchcraft in the United States to Raymond Buckland, Ray made it easy for me because he kept all of his newspaper clippings, so I didn't have to look them up at the library. They were already there. And Llewellyn too, like they kept a lot of things over the years. They kept some of his letters to the owner and publisher at Llewellyn. His name was Carl Weschke. So that was really nice. That helped the writing a lot, because here is this real source material, and here's Ray actually speaking for himself, and I'm just there to kind of put it in a book. And I did meet people who didn't like Ray. I did ask like one high priestess, would you like to contribute something to the book? You had to know Ray. And she's like, he was terrible. So, you do run into that when you're writing a book. Not everybody's universally loved, but most people that I met who met him had very good interactions with him, and you can't write something that's not substantiated, right? I can't,
Right.
It's hard to write, oh, this person hates Ray, but I mean, if there's a good documented reason, then it becomes something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I can ramble about writing this book for a long time, because it took a long time to write this book. Usually I write a book in 6-9 months, something like that. And I worked on this book for 2.5 years. So it was a very different project in that sense.
So if they asked you to write another book, another biography, what would you say?
Absolutely not. No. No. I'm glad, as I said, I'm glad that I did it once, and I met a lot of really great people on the journey. I got to meet Ray's widow. Her name is Tara, and she's terrific. She's so nice. She's so sweet. She was so helpful. I'm really glad that I got to meet her and have her become a part of my life. Stephen and Tony at the Buckland Museum are wonderful people. They were a part of this journey. So, there were blessings from doing it, but no, I don't ever want to do it again. I'm going to shake my finger. No, never doing it again.
Well, you heard that on Witch Hat Chat.
Yeah. I will say that, like, it is cool to know that I wrote a biography, though. I mean, I don't think I've ever been more tickled to have a book come out than this one, because it's so different than everything else, right? Nobody else has ever written a biography of this guy, so I'm the only one. For better or for worse, I'm the only one.
So that was pretty cool. We're starting to write the biographies of the elders in our community now, and not a lot of people are doing that.
No, there are not a whole lot of witch biographies that are out there. There's some memoirs. A lot of high priestesses and whatever have written memoirs over the years, like the first generation of Gerald Gardner's high priestesses, Patricia Crowther, Doreen Valiente, Lois Bourne, Doreen Valley. Yeah, they all wrote memoirs, which are useful. But there aren't a whole lot of witch biographies. There's Philip Heselton's Witch Father, which is a biography of Gerald Gardner, and there's a small biography of Stuart Farrar, who wrote the Witch's Bible with his wife Janet, and the Witch's God and the Witch's Goddess, and a bunch of other things, and a couple of others. But there's not a whole lot of There aren't a whole lot of biographies out there. It's a pretty untapped territory. And
Right.
I do worry about, are we taking care of our history? Are we taking care of our legacies and things, because to me, these people were really important. They paved the way for us to be able to do this today, right? And all of this witch ecosystem that we now have. So yeah, I think it's kind of cool to learn about them and to learn about the evolution of ideas in our community. So, there was a time when our community was not a very accepting community. There were a lot of witches who were like, you can't be gay and be a witch, you can't be a lesbian and be a witch, And I'm not just talking about LGBTQ, because I think a lot of these people didn't even realize that the, TQI plus even existed at the time in the early 70s. And we've just come such a long way. And I think it's important to remember that this is not that long ago, where it was really dangerous to come out of the closet in a lot of situations, and a lot of witch groups wouldn't accept, someone who just wasn't straight, so yeah, the history is important.
I've always hated that term straight. None of us are straight. Nobody's ever straight.
I don't think so. I don't think anyone is ever 100% straight. I think we're just kind of on a line, right? I've never liked it either. I think there's a curve. I think everybody has a curve.
I mean, shit, look at me. I'm curvy. Straight my ass. So, one last question. Where can our people find you?
I am very easy to find. There are 4 Jason Mankeys in the entire world, I think. And one of them's a preacher in Indiana. But I come up first in all of the searches. Like, that dude is buried deep, deep on the internet because have written all these books. So they find me first. So I'm very easy to find. I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, TikTok, pretty much all of the social media hangouts. And I tour a lot. I do a lot of events and festivals. So there's always a chance that I'll be around and near you. And when that happens, come up to me and I'll share whatever whiskey I brought with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show and being my co-host today.
Hey, it was a pleasure. This was really fun. I had a great time. Great time. I feel like I just rambled for the last 20 minutes about this book. So I hope I didn't put anyone to sleep.
I doubt that. And I will see you at the Spring Mysteries Festival.
We will hang out next week. It'll be great.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
You'll love me.
I already do.
Mwah. All right. So that's all for our show today. So embrace your power, support your community, and keep your fuzzy babies, your family, your friends, and yourself safe, and have an absolute magical week.